evaluated and a supplier is identified. Now, when that happens, then you send the local purchase order to indicate that he or she is the winner, and now you are ordering whatever item is being mentioned.
Now,
Mr. Sanyang, is this LPO different from all the forms that when you do requisition, the forms you fill? Is it different from all those forms, like Form 101 and etc.?
Yes, it's different because Form 101, for example, is the requisition, where you indicate what you wanted with all requirements, specifications, and so on, will be indicated and then sent to the potential suppliers, either pre-qualified or chosen in any form. But the 101 will be prepared and sent to the potential suppliers. So they will respond. They will respond based on the requirements that you indicated on Form 101. If you look at the Form 101, it's called Request for Quotation. Now here, you are requesting quotations from the various suppliers. When that is done, you expect a response, offer, from those who collected or those who are given the Form 101. They will offer, but you will have different offers, of course. Now you will evaluate the offers, and then from there you choose the one that you think is more responsive to your requirements. That one will be chosen, and then you send a local purchase order.
Thank you.
So, in summary, will I be correct to say, basically, once a supplier has been identified following the due process, then you will send some sort of a documentation form to outline, inform the supplier that this is the, he or she, or the company has been awarded so and so contract, and these are the goods to be supplied, specifications here and there.
Yes.
So that, why do you need a local purchase order then?
It's a legal document to show that you want to enter into contract with that supplier. It is important because documentation in procurement is very important. So, you can do it by telephone call and the like, but then things like you have other implications, negative implications using telephone conversation and the like. But then to have it legally recorded, it is important that communication is done on a form like Form 101.
May I draw your attention to the implications therein?
Okay.
Yes, so what are the implications?
One, the supplier may not deliver the goods or services on time, and two, may lead to conflict between the parties to the contract if one default in their responsibilities.
Now, let's move to other issues. On page 26, the sending of reports to GPPA. We learned that it is mandatory to send reports to GPPA. Are these reports supposed to be sent yearly or quarterly, or what is the requirement?
According to the Act,
yes,
procuring organizations are obliged to be reporting to the authority on monthly basis on procurements that have not been subjected to their review. I think Mr. Tamura must have told you that we have different kinds of review, post and prior and so on. And he must also have told you about the thresholds and the like.
Yes.
So that procurements like single source and request for quotations, in most cases, if they are within the threshold, they are done within the procuring organization without coming to the authority.
Yes.
So the law requires that on monthly basis, such procurements that were not subjected to the authorities' prior approval be sent on monthly basis. And here you have the Form 006 for single sources and Form 200 for the RFQs.
So
these are expected to be sent on monthly basis.
So in the case of Birkama Area Council, they don't follow these requirements for the year 2019?
Yes, they have not been sending their monthly reports on.
Now on page 27, with respect to the heading value for money, do you see that?
Yes, yes.
The first point is they don't engage on market surveys. Why are market surveys important? What is a market survey and why is it important?
A market survey is trying to find out about what prevails in the market in terms of availability of goods or services, in terms of their prices, in terms of their quality, and so on and so forth.
So then it's important for a procuring authority to know who they will award a particular contract to based on all of these factors, one of which is pricing, the prevailing price at the time.
Yes, it is very important to conduct a market research.
Now, the last point. Can you please read the last point loud, please?
Prices of most procured items were exceptionally high.
Yes, for the year 2019, your office found out that for Birkama Area Council, most of the procured items, the prices were exceptionally high. Can you please discuss more on that further?
Actually, what our reviewers observe is that they look at all the transactions that the Birkama Area Council conducted over the period under reviewed. And then for some of the items, they try to look at the amount paid compared to what prevails in the market. Because, of course, we are all living in the Gambia, and when a price is given, you will be able to, of course, also compare it with what prevails in the market. So the review revealed that some of the items, the prices, far exceed what prevails in the market.
Now, please proceed. Go ahead.
Yes.
Now, why do you think that is the case? When you have a procuring authority routinely purchasing items or procuring items at a very, or going by the word that you use, exceptionally high high price. Why do you think that is the case?
Actually, one, there will be no value for money. Why? Because value for money...
Not the implications. Now we want to understand why an institution will now engage in regularly procuring goods or services, for in this case goods, at a very, not only high price, but exceptionally high price. What will you in fact say will amount to an exceptionally high price? Just give an example of an exceptionally high price.
One, definitely we know that if the prices are exceptionally high, it may be caused by probably one, no proper market research was conducted.
No proper market survey.
Yes, no proper market survey may not be conducted. And number two, probably it was deliberate. I'm not very sure, I'm not accusing, but it could be deliberate for some probably financial gains. It's all possible.
Yes, so you are saying in some situations, forget Birkama for a second, generally in the procurement, in procurement environment, generally, if you have procurement authorities conducting procurement on a daily basis or within the span of a particular period, if you have an instance wherein goods or items are being procured at exceptionally high price, maybe it could be an honest mistake in the fact that they failed to conduct market surveys, which they are required to conduct, because if they would have done that, they would have known the prices generally. Yeah. But the other point as well is that in fact these things could be a deliberate act to have financial gains, which would be fraudulent in nature.
Yeah, but apart from those 2 points,
yes,
it could also be that there has been a sort of bid rigging, collusion between bidders. For example, you have 3 bidders and they know each other and they know that quotations are collected from only those 3 people. It's possible that they can collude and deliberately increase prices unnecessarily.
But that will only come when the procurement authority followed the rules and regulations in trying to make sure that what is required, or the required procedure for a particular procurement method is followed. Then now that is independent from the procurement authority, but then the fault lies at the with respect to the bidding, or the suppliers, when they have monopoly over certain goods. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I want to believe that if proper procedures are followed,
yes,
if proper procedures are followed, it is unlikely that things like that will happen.
Exactly.
If proper procedures are followed.
Yes. On page 28. So page 28 will now make us understand better page 27 with respect to purchasing or procuring goods at a very, very high price. Because page 28 is with respect to contracts management. So it is a requirement that there has to be a contracts committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, there were non-compliance issues that you found in relation to the review for 2019, yes, with respect to contracts management or committee. Yes. What are these issues?
Bullet number 1, inspection and acceptance committees are not established as part of the contracts management procedures in contravention of Regulation 127 and 128.
Okay, number 2.
Supplier performance review are not carried out to inform future improvement of the suppliers on completion of their deliveries.
Number
as
3.
Required by the regulation.
Yes, that
no
point.
Evidence of contract management team in place. And the last one is no contract document in place, especially for the procurement of fuel and fuel from Petrogas.
Now, let's start with the last point. It was found that there were no contract documents in place, but most especially with respect to fuel from Petrogas. Again, which means all goods or services being procured during this period for 2019, it did not follow the required procedure. Yeah. But then, in fact, the reason why you have all these failures in relation to the supposedly present contracts committee is, let me ask the question, in fact, it appears as if there was no contracts committee in place. Was there any? You can see the third point.
You can have a contracts committee, but for every procurement, you can have a subcommittee responsible for or to manage that particular contract.
You said in this finding that no evidence of contract management team in place. What does that mean?
There is no evidence that for their transactions or the various procurements, there is no management team established to oversee those procurements.
So it will be fair to conclude that there, as far as you're concerned, for 2019, As at the time of conducting the review, compliance review, there was no contrast committee present.
I think there is a difference between a contrast committee and a contract management team.
Please tell us the difference.
You can have a contrast committee. And of course, part of their responsibility is to ensure proper management of all contracts. But you can have a contrast committee, and it is not the whole contrast committee members who should be part of every contract management. A contrast committee can identify some members within or outside the contrast committee to manage a particular project. I don't know whether you understand what I am talking about.
Mr. Sergeant, can you refer us to the legislation that makes the distinction, or in your regulations, that makes the distinction between the contracts management team and the contracts committee? Because I think when Mr. Jaite and Mr. Tambura came, they referred to the law making reference to the setting up of the contracts committee. So if you can refer us to the regulations of the law that makes a distinction and gives an idea of what you are saying so that we can follow. Thank you.
Now, if you look at section 47, section 47 of the Act,
yes, please proceed.
47, subsection 1.
Yeah.
A contrast committee shall be established in every procuring organization in the Gambia, supported by specialized procurement unit to be established in the organization. And procuring organizations with low levels of procurement may jointly establish a shared procurement unit.
Okay.
And the
sorry, Mr. Sanyang, I am a bit lost because I'm looking at the Gambia Public Procurement Act 2022 and section 47. Huh?
Now, the procurements in question, the years in question, were governed by 2014 and 2018 Amendment Act, not 2022.
Okay. Okay. All right. Can you please read that, because the legislation I have before me is the 2022. Can you please go through that one again?
Now, section 47(1), of course, that will show the requirement for the establishment of a contrast committee. But then you have the functions on another page, which, of course, I will also draw your attention to. So for this one, you have a contrast committee shall be established in every procuring organization. So the word shall meaning all procuring organizations are required, it's mandatory to establish contrast committee. And according to the Act, the contrast committee have 3 permanent members: the head of the institution, or the CEO, or the permanent secretaries for some institutions. You have the director of finance, somebody responsible for budgets or finances, and you have the procurement officer. These are the 3 permanent members of a contracts committee. But then, the law further provides that other members can be co-opted when the need arises. So here you can, or the law allows them to co-opt anybody that they feel have the expertise for technical advices and so on and so forth. But these are the 3 members. So here, when you have the 3 members, others may be co-opted. So among the members that are co-opted together with the permanent members, a subcommittee can be created for a particular procurement, to oversee a particular procurement. And these include what? From the starting, including the management of that particular contract. So what I am trying to establish is possible. There is a contracts committee. But once a contract is awarded, all the other procedures are followed and the like, and a contract is awarded, Brikama Area Council did not go further to establish another sub-unit that will be in charge of that particular procurement until the end, up to the time when the goods or services are delivered and even verified. So that is what we are talking about. There could be a contracts committee, but a subcommittee is not probably created to be in charge in terms of managing that particular contract until the end.
So is it the law that there should always be a subcommittee from the contracts committee to manage the procurement process?
Yes.
What is the law?
Depending on the complexity or the nature of that particular program.
Can you refer us to the law or the regulation?
Now, Regulation 127 and 128 provides for the establishment of
$120.
127 and 128.
That is Regulation 2018.
Yeah.
Are you referring to Regulation 2018?
Regulation 2019.
Okay. Okay, what did you say?
Regulation 20. Unfortunately, I didn't bring my... Now, in short, these regulations provide for...
Sorry, let me just clarify. In 2018, you have regulations pursuant to Section 65 of your Act, Amendment Act. And in 2019, this 2018 was amended?
No, that was 2018.
So there is no 2019, it's 2018.
It's 2018. It's 2018.
It's 2018 you are referring to?
Yes, it's 2018.
Okay, so but the 2018 section 127, what I have may be different from what you have. I stand to be corrected. Section 127 is procedures for local purchase orders and petty contracts. Can you see that?
No, actually I have the act, but not the regulations with me here.
Okay, so you are not quoting from the right legislation.
No, actually by our report, yes.
By your report, what did you highlight?
By our report, you have regulations 127 and 128 talking about the establishment of contract management procedures.
Okay. Yes, but that is different from the committee that you are talking about. So that is why I wanted clarity. You are saying that, you have read the law which referred to the setting up of the contracts committee.
Yes.
And you are saying that there should be a subcommittee to manage the process of procurement. Yes, and I ask you to refer this commission to the particular regulation or the law which says after the setting up of the committee, that is the procurement committee, you should set up a further subcommittee to manage the process. That is the question I ask.
Now, if you look at the provisions,
yes,
that the composition of a contract committee,
that is understood.
yes, 3 permanent members.
Yes.
And then the others can be co-opted when the need arises. So when there is a need to set up a subcommittee for contract management, yes, you can do so.
Okay. But it's not really specifically provided for. But where there is a need, the contracts committee can set up a further subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank you. It's now clear.
Mr. Satsani.
Yes.
What is the role of the contracts committee?
The roles of the contracts committee.
Mr. Sane, you can just tell us, like I said earlier on, generally, basically, what you know about the roles of a contracts committee.
Actually, the contracts committee is wholly and solely responsible for all procurements in a procuring organization. They are responsible for procurement planning. They are responsible for identifying procurement procedures and processes. They are responsible for drawing specification. They are responsible for defining their requirements and so on and so forth. And they are responsible for contract management.
Do they approve procurement at the institutional level?
Yes.
And then the composition of the contracts committee, one of the permanent members is the SPU, is that correct?
Yes.
The specialized procurement unit.
The head of the specialized procurement unit.
Yes. In effect, of course, the SPU.
Yes.
Now, what is the legal requirement? Is it that there has to be a contracts committee, or there has to be a contracts management or sub-team?
There should be a contracts committee in every procuring organization.
That is the requirement.
Yes.
And so when you go into to conduct compliance review, your interest is as to whether there's a contracts committee or not.
Yes, that is one of our interests.
Yes. So even where, assumingly, they set up a committee, a subcommittee, which is not in fact the case, because the requirement is they can sub-delegate that to the SPU. That is the requirement, the specialized procurement unit. But let's assume they can even set up a subcommittee. The overall approval will have to be given by the contracts committee. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And so therefore, that
yes. We want, in the first place, we established that a contracts committee do exist or not.
Yes. So unless and until there is evidence that in this particular procurement conducted, it was the contracts committee authorized a subcommittee or sub-management team, which in turn approved and so on and so forth. Your primary focus is, with respect to procurement, is whether contracts committees have been following the due process and whether they have approved the ones that they are supposed to approve.
Okay, let me make this clarification. Now, the subcommittee that I talked about is for contract management. It is different from the SPU. Now, for the SPU, yes, the contracts committee can look at the value and nature of a procurement and set a threshold for the specialized procurement unit. And in that case, the SPU can proceed without coming to the...
Is there any evidence that...
No.
Now, is there any evidence that in fact there was a contrast committee in place for 2019?
Yes, we have evidences.
Yes, please refer us with respect to the compliance report for 2019, where we have the contrast committee being set up. Do you see it?
No, I'm trying to go over the report to see.
You can turn to page 5. From 4, after the entry meetings, generally, is it not correct that your team will outline the various strategies, the methodology, and the team you find on the ground when you conduct a compliance review? Is that not usually the practice?
Page 5. Yes, on page 5 you find the names of those in attendance at the entry meeting. And
yes.
In most cases, these are the people.
No, let us not, Mr. Sane.
Yes.
Please, may I have your attention?
Yes.
May I have your attention?
Yes.
Let us not try to speculate. So we go by what the report that your office gave to us. So we are not here to be making speculations. Where we will need you to come in with your expertise in relation to what obtains in a particular situation, we will ask you that question. Now, we cannot speculate as to whether, in fact, there is a possibility that there was a contrast committee. If there was a contrast committee, the report will clearly highlight it. So it is not for you to say, or for me to say, that these names may constitute, or usually they constitute the contrast committee. That would not be very correct, sir. So
now,
at the entry meeting, what are the names?
Modu Jonga, Chief
Yes.
Executive Officer.
Please proceed.
Ibrahim Sawane, Director of Administration. Alaji Jeng, Director of Finance. Sidu Kunta, Procurement Manager. Lamin Suso, Manager of Finance. Adama Bojang, Director of Planning. Lamin Singate, Council Clerk.
Now, turn to page 6. You will also see the staff directly involved in the review process.
Page 6, yes.
Yes. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, do you see any table in relation to the composition of the contrast committee?
Actually, if you go back to the first table here, the first table.
Yes.
That is the
on
names,
page?
Names of those.
Please refer us to the page, please.
That's page 5.
Yes. Go ahead.
Names of those in attendance at the exit meeting.
Yes.
Now, when we review, at the end of our review, we conduct meetings with members of the contrast committee.
Yes.
And like I said earlier, there are certain people that are automatically members of the contrast committee. And these include the CEO, as you can see there, and the Director of Finance and the Procurement Officer. Automatically, their names are there. Those are automatically members.
Of what?
As provided for by the Act. members of the contrast committee.
These are names that are supposed to be part of the contrast committee as per the act. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Are they in fact part of the contrast committee on, for Brikama Area Council for 2019?
I assume, yes.
Why do you assume that?
Because as the law provides, the CEO or head of every institution should be automatically a member of the or head of the contrast committee. And in this case,
let's just cut this short. Was there a contrast committee present when you conducted the review for 2019?
These are the members that are present.
Was there a contrast committee present for 2019? Do you have evidence that there was a contrast committee present? I am not saying there was no contrast committee, but again, you are not supposed to be coming here and telling us things that you're not sure of, just to speculate. Was there a contrast committee present for 2019? It's a simple question. Do you have evidence of that? If you have it, just show us and we move on.
What I am saying is, when we go out for reviews, we have two very important meetings. One, the entry meeting, and the exit meeting.
Let me show you the compliance review for the year ended 31st December 2019 with respect to Carnival Municipal Council, dated the 15th day of February 2021. It is in evidence. On page 13. On page 13. Read the heading of the table. It's in evidence already. Read the heading of the table.
Okay. Contrast committee members for the year under review.
One, who are the members?
One, you have Mrs. Senabu Martin Sonko,
yes,
who is the CEO.
Yes.
Mr. Ablai Kebe.
Yes.
Vice chairman, member.
Yes. How many do you have altogether?
You have about 10.
10. And the heading says what again? Please repeat it louder.
Members of the contrast committee
for the year
under review.
And that is for KMC?
Yes.
For which year for KMC?
For the year under review, and that would be year ended 31st.
So where you have a contrast, can I have the document? Where you have a contrast committee for any institution that you conduct compliance for, especially the area councils, you put it on the document. It's very clear. Now, do you see an example of this, having a contrast committee for Brikama for 2019? Do you see that here? Do you see a table constituting the contrast committee for Brikama?
Now, the reports are written by different... Okay. No.
Exactly. No. You don't see it, so we just move on. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, please turn to page 27.
Page 27.
No, we were on page 28. Now, let's go to the specific findings on chapter 4 on page 30.
Page 30?
Yes. Where you have samples of findings in relation to the various procurement being conducted for the year 2019 for Brikama Area Council. Are you there?
Page 30.
Yes. The chapter is chapter 4. The heading is specific findings. Are you there?
Yes, findings, yeah.
Now the category of this first finding is goods. The amount is $70,150. The awarded contractor is Far Moro Gen. The method is RFQ. And the tender number is PV number 179. There were non-compliance issues in relation to the request for quotation method being used. And what are those?
The procured...
Sorry, Mr. Science. Sorry. before we proceed on the specific findings, may I just ask Mr. Sanyang to elaborate on at page 29. There are issues, you said, other related issues. Having gone through documents presented for the period under review, we discovered that all the fuel transactions were not submitted to the review team because what was provided reads a total of 4,201,966.49 bututs, while the fuel transactions on the general ledger reads a total of 9,545,933.78 bututs. Can you please explain the differences here, over 5 million, that you cannot account for during this period under review?
Okay. Now, when we go for review, and as you can see on the population, we cover almost all the files that were shown to us. But when it comes to fuel procurement, it was discovered that the total sum of the documents presented is less than the amount spent for fuel on the general ledger. That is one of the things that we discovered. The total, as per the documents submitted, is less than the total on the general ledger. And that may suggest that there are documents that are not presented to the review team.
And why was that?
Well, probably is because of poor filing systems. They cannot account for those documents. Because in procurement, the law requires that a special filing system be adopted.
So is that the only reason that you can impute as to why they could not present to you over $5 million in missing of documents? That is the only reason? Poor filing system?
Now, when I talk about poor filing system, it may have different reasons for that.
Yes,
it could be deliberate that some of the documents were hidden and were not. They don't want us to see them. It's all possible.
In fact, I was going to leave that for the last discussion. So let's just discuss it once and for all. It is good that the chairperson has already brought it up right now. You said one of the reasons for the difference, just to have it again, what your team found on the ground was evidence of an amount of $4,201,966.49 bututs being evidence of fuel being purchased. We will talk about the procedure, in fact, not being followed at some point. But then this is one of the issues. But then the entire fuel transactions on the general ledger is 9,545,933.78 bututs. You are saying one of the reasons is that they didn't present that the other documentations to prove that.
Yes.
And probably the reason why they do that is because of what? They didn't want you to know.
They may not. That may be one of the reasons. The other reasons could be proper or due process is not followed. Because yes, if due process is followed right from the beginning, for example, the preparation of requisition forms, then approval of the head of the institution, you have the quotations collected and evaluated, and then award decisions are taken and the contract is awarded. That is a full documentation, and that could be kept or kept in the records. But if the right procedure is not followed, probably there is no formal requisition, and then probably they went straight and buy from one supplier, and so on and so forth, then there will be no documentation. But like I said earlier, the documents could not be found, and the reasons for the documents not being shown to us, definitely the authority cannot be in a position to tell exactly why those documents are not given to us.
You may not know why, specifically why, but you will definitely know as an expert in this area, in procurement, as to why, what are the possible reasons as to why certain situations may arise in a certain procurement being carried out by a specific institution or individual. Because when I asked earlier on, you said in one of the questions I asked, you said possibly for financial gains. Is that a possibility in this situation?
Yeah, it's one of the possibilities, together with the other two main possibilities that I told you. One of them being, if proper procedures are not followed, it can lead to this one.
Because if there are documentations, would there be any reason as to why, if there are documentations to back these entire transactions of 9 million or about 10 million, if you round it up entirely, if there are documentation, would it not be on the advantage of the procuring individual or authority to provide evidence that in fact we have documentations to prove that this is the actual amount, $9 million or plus, is the actual amount that we have spent on fuel? Would that not be on their advantage?
Yes, it would.
So they wouldn't just have these documents to back their position and then just keep it in a particular folder, secret folder, and not show you, because that would not be in their advantage.
I'm saying that that is one of the possibilities.
Now I'm just saying that
the documents are not available.
I am just saying that the logical conclusion is that once you are not given evidence to back this entire purchase, it's because it does not exist as far as you're concerned.
They can be existing but hidden for some reasons, but it's also possible that due process is not followed and the documents are not in place.
With respect to the due process not being followed, it's not even a possibility. It actually exists. They did not follow due process. Am I right to say that? In this situation, due process was not followed. Or do you have evidence that due process was followed in this situation?
Now, due process could be followed. For example, if you look at the amount involved, it falls within RFQ. No, sir?
What is RFQ?
A request for quotation.
Yes.
It falls within RFQ,
yes.
which should not be subjected to our prior approval. Okay, they can continue without the GPP approval. So, if even the due process here, I am not talking about whether the prices are inflated or so on, but then if there is a requisition, quotations collected, and for some reasons, probably the evaluation is biased towards the supplier and so on and so forth. In this case, they have taken the right course to get the documentation and the like. But because they don't want us to see the evaluation report and so on, probably the documents are in place but then hidden so that we cannot see them. It's all possible.
See, again.
Sorry, let me just intervene. Mr. Sanyang,
yes.
Our reason for sitting here, may I remind you, please, is to find out what are the lapses and what are the issues. And as technicians, you are supposed to provide to the Commission very direct and concise answers as to compliance, because that is why you conduct the review.
Yes.
So, kindly, what we are trying to ask here is to ascertain whether the reasons as to why you could not access information to show you the evidence of the 5 million that was purportedly used to purchase fuel. Because going by the record, you have also indicated that distribution might not have been done. The fuel might not have been even distributed. You said that in the report. So that is the reason. That is why we are asking you to elaborate as to what is the proper process and procedure to have followed and what is the consequences of not following those proper procedures. Thank you. Councillor,
Listen.
Yes.
We go by the report that your office prepared. Do you follow? We are going by the report
Yes.
that your office submitted to us. Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
Now, we are only discussing findings as per the report. Where we need your expert opinion, of course, generally we'll ask you.
Yes. Yes.
Do you understand that? Now, we are not here to speculate, I said earlier on. So you tell us, for this particular transaction, where you have a difference of more than $5 million, in your recommendations, you said all fuel purchases should be tender, by way of tender. Is that not correct?
Yes, it's correct.
Which means the fuel purchases were not by way of tender.
They were not tendered.
Was due process followed?
No.
Good. Because that, based on your recommendations, you can assume whether due process was followed or not. So you said all framework agreements should be requested from GPPA because that was not done in this situation. That is why you recommend for that to be done. Is that not correct?
Yes, you are
The
correct.
third is a proper fuel logbook should be created to monitor and control the movement of fuel stock level. So all these recommendations, or for most part of it, it is because of the fact that they didn't follow the due process. That is why you recommend that they follow these procedures.
Correct.
Good. Now, let's move to the specific findings. I drew your attention with respect to the $70,150 worth of goods that was being procured.
Page.
Page 30. And there were non-compliant issues with respect to that.
Yes.
The first part is it was not part of the procurement plan as stipulated in the regulation. And you have the third point, the quotation was not approved by the contracts committee. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, the fourth point, please take us to the fourth point.
There was no delivery receipt as stipulated in section 35(2) of the GPPA Act 2018.
Just to hear your part, what is a delivery receipt or note?
Now, delivery note is a document that is, of course, signed when goods are delivered to ascertain that a particular good is received.
So that was absent for this transaction.
Yes.
So first you have an amount like $70,150,
Yes.
but then there is no evidence of delivery of that particular item. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Now, page 31, you have the management response. Did they agree with your findings?
Yes, they agree.
Now, 4.1, the procurement of spare parts. What is the amount?
762,000.
And who was the contractor?
Sorry, 26,000.
Who was the contractor?
26,000.
The contractor?
Jamal Baden Enterprise.
What is the method of procurement?
Request for quotation.
And what were the problems with respect to that that particular procurement that was being done or carried out?
Now, bullet point 1, the procured item was not part of the procurement plan as stipulated in regulation 25.
This is a general problem for
Yes.
2019 for
Yes, yes.
for Brikama Area Council.
Yes.
And the third one,
The quotation was not approved by the contracts committee.
Will I be correct to say that throughout this report we have seen that, in fact, there was no approval for, in fact, all of the transactions that we have seen for 2019 by the supposed contracts committee that was supposed to be present for 2019? Will I be correct to say that?
Yes, yes.
And if you turn to page 32, were there minutes of the contracts committee meeting?
The second to the last point,
yes.
There was no minute of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in Gambia Public Procurement Regulations and the GPPA Amendment Act 2018.
So this amount as well, with respect to this, the procurement of spare parts did not follow the due process. Do you know who approved, or would you know who approved these transactions?
No, I don't know.
Now, the procurement of tires, do you see that? Page 32?
Yes, 4.2.
What is the amount?
105,000.
The awarded contractor?
Again, Jamal Badin Enterprise.
What is the method of procurement?
Request for quotation.
Was there any problem with respect to this procurement?
Whether there was?
Were there any issues, non-compliance issues?
Yes, you have the non-compliance issues, about
yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them.
Please, briefly.
1, the procured item was not part of the procurement plan as stipulated in Regulations 25(1) of the Gambia Public Procurement Regulations and Section 29. You have 2, the quotation was not approved by the contracts committee. 3, there was no inspection committee to inspect the goods as stipulated in Regulations 133 and 136. There was no minute of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in Gambia Public Procurement Regulations and the GPPA Amendment Act 2018. And the last one, no evaluation report generated for this procurement.
Now, again, it's very similar findings. Is that correct? We see again no evidence of the contracts committee.
Yes, yes, yes.
Needless to say that there was no approval, because if there is no evidence of the contracts committee, then we would even be talking about the approvals. On page 33.
Yes, 33.
What is the amount?
400,000.
What is the category?
Goods.
The supplier?
Bubaba, general merchandise.
Yes, so, yes, please run us through the non-compliance issues. Because the method is RFQ.
Yes, RFQ, the same, the procured item was not part of the procurement plan. 1, the quotation was not open quotations were not open in a register of Form 004 as stipulated in Regulation 35(2) and 29 of the GPP Amendment Act, that is the Act, and Regulations 25. The quotation was not approved by the Contracts Committee. There was no inspection committee to inspect the goods as stipulated in Regulation 133 to 136. Purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in Gambia Public Procurement Regulation 28 and Section 12(7) and 2 of the GPPA Act. GPPA forms such as 101 and 102 were not attached. There was no minutes of the Contracts Committee meeting as stipulated in Gambia Public Procurement Regulations, Amendment Act 2018. No evaluation report generated for this procurement, and there was no delivery receipt as stipulated in Section 35(2) of the Gambia Public Procurement
yes,
Act 2018.
So we discussed most of this, the lack of delivery receipt is reoccurring, we have seen. Evaluation report, also a problem. Minutes of contracts committee meeting. We have, of course, individuals purporting to be conducting contracts committee functions. But then we see no minutes of meetings for most, to be fair, for most of the transactions. Is that correct?
Yes.
That we have discussed even today.
Yes.
Now, the compliance points, you only have one point that you highlighted, that the procurement method is within the threshold as stipulated in section 38 and 45 of the GPPA Act. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the only, is that the only point that they complied with?
Well, as far as this is concerned, yes.
Right. Now, turn to page 34. Where you have the procurement of tuna.
Yes.
At an amount of $14,375.
Yes.
The contractor is Primary Stationery Limited, and it's RFQ, the method.
Yeah.
The non-compliance issues were very similar. That there is no purchase order.
Yes.
No minutes of the contracts committee again. No evaluation report. And there was no delivery receipt. You have highlighted, or you've agreed with me that when you don't have a delivery receipt, there is no evidence of the, in fact, where the item purchased is in fact being delivered for the use of the institution. Is that correct?
Yes, it's part of the conclusions.
Yes.
But the other could be, you cannot even verify whether the goods that are received are of the right quality or even quantity are specified in.
Yes.
Of course, we talked about Form 101,
yes,
where you're supposed to prepare your requirements. So you may not be able to verify whether.
And there's no even evidence of approval by the contracts committee for even this transaction, like
yes,
all the other transactions. Yes, so just below that you have the hiring of bulldozer for clearing of Tambana dump site. The amount is 65,000. The contractor, Camara and Sons Company Limited, is a single source. That is the method of the procurement. Yes, what are the issues in relation to the non-compliance of the GPPA Act or regulation?
Now, the non-compliant issues are almost the same as the ones that we indicated.
Except for point 2?
For point 2, the procurement method is above the threshold, yes.
What should
single
be
source.
What should be the threshold again?
The threshold for single source.
Yes.
For goods and services is $20,000 is for goods and services.
And this is way above that.
Yes.
And again, there were no minutes of the contracts committee, so there is obviously no evidence of approval.
Yes.
And what is the response of the management?
They noted meaning agreement to our findings.
Now, 4.6 on same page, procurement of office stationery, 76,590. Awarded contractor KJN, single source. Again, is this below, within, or above the threshold?
It's above the threshold of single source.
No evidence again of the delivery receipt. But on the fourth point, if we turn on the other page.
Yes, there was no delivery receipt as stipulated in section 35(2).
And the management response is the same, noted.
Yes.
So procurement of 5 HP 83A tuna. Again, a single source, $32,000, is $32,775. KGN is a contractor.
Yes.
That is above the threshold, is it?
Yes, it's above the threshold.
And the same problems, no inspection committee, no purchase order, no procurement method. is above the threshold, and the item was not specified on the procurement plan.
Yes.
Now, the 4.8 procurement of inner tube, $3,000 is, and Sumana Konjira, single source. The non-compliance, same problems. There was no inspection, no delivery receipt, and no purchase order raised. Is that correct?
Yes, but maybe this was an oversight by the team. If you look at the amount, $3,000 is.
Oversight by your team, you mean?
Yes, maybe the team of reviewers.
Yes.
Because if you look at the amount involved, it's $3,000, which is within the single source threshold.
So what is the oversight here?
The oversight is the threshold, because single source, sorry, the $3,000 is within the single source threshold.
I want to understand what the oversight is. Did they say it is above the threshold? Did the report indicate that the amount is above the threshold?
Okay. They are saying that of course, it's not planned for.
Yes.
For the second quotation and the.
To Mr. Sanya.
Yes.
They said under that point is there is compliance because it's within the threshold. If you look at blood point 1, it says compliance.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Proceed.
So with respect to the threshold, the report is correct that it is still
within.
Yes,
it's within the threshold. That one is within.
Exactly. So I just want to align myself with the chairperson. When you said there was an oversight, there was in fact no oversight. Turn to page 38, 4.9, procurement of Samsung mobile phone. How much is the amount?
12 million.
12?
Sorry, 12,000. 12,000.
$12,000.
Yes.
And of course, the category is goods. The contractor is Global Electronics.
Yes.
The method is single source. What were the
open in a register of form 003 as stipulated in.
Please speak louder.
Not open.
Yes.
Register of form 003 as stipulated in regulation.
Yes.
35-2.
What is the third point?
There was no delivery receipt as stipulated in section 35-2 of the GPPA Amendment Act.
And there was no inspection committee to inspect the goods?
Yes.
That's the fourth point. How about the fifth?
Purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in regulation 28 of the GPPR and section 12.7.
Now, for just going by your general recommendations, for the year 2019, was there any procurement plan for Birkam Area Council?
No.
Now, Honorable Chairperson, that brings us to the end. The compliance rate 2019. If the commissioners have any questions, that we will.
Honorable Joyner has questions.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I would ask Mr. Ibrahim Sanya that all what have been said this morning is non-compliance. And I want to believe that GPPA came into being to avert a lot of this type of problems. That is, you want to secure the funds of the public before it is being abused. In the sense that here you're talking about it's not in the plan, it's not been inspected, we are not goods being delivered, a lot of host of things that have gone wrong. And I am a bit confused in that if GPPA was brought in to avert such discrepancies to happen, these things are brought to you after they had done what they have done. That's the case, is it? Now, is there a mechanism within your act or regulations whereby things can be held before it is executed because you are not satisfied with none of single sourcing, is it request for quotation and all of these things? These things are not being, it seems as if you are just sitting there, I will do what I want to do, and then I will report to castigate me for doing the wrong thing. But what comes out of it? If it's a yearly thing, I do what I want to do, I do a review, and you've seen that I have violated a lot of the rules, and nothing comes out of it. For example, let's take, I just took an example. You said here a HP computer was purchased for 135,000. Dell was purchased for 30,000. Here we have not been told what the specifications of these two computers were, and yet still it is for use by whoever the originating office demand is for. Because if you have an expert and they send a request for purchase, they will state the specification and everything. Where these things compared, forget about the brand name, but the specifications, where they really looked into to say, this is fit for purpose, and you give your blessing. You are complaining that it didn't go through the normal process of purchasing. But my thinking is, why do you have to complain after the fact the thing has been done? Why not before, so that they can halt? Something is missing in your authority or in your legislation, that we don't have the authority to stop. We don't have the authority to return goods and services that have been acquired wrongfully. You cannot surcharge whoever has done it. You know, these are the things that would send a warning signal to whoever or the general public as to how I have to do business with the public institution. Have that stick. It's just that you just complain and you leave it. My company can come in tomorrow and do the same thing, and for all we know here, you don't have a list of companies that you have been debarred, you call it. So it's free for all. Let's do what we want to do, and that's it. They will complain as long as they much as, like, look, some of the responses noted. What does noted mean? I know that what you have said is true, but I'm still going to do what I want to do. That's noted. So from your position as director of operations, do you need to be empowered to do something that could seriously secure the assets of the public? Do you have any in mind? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I think the first, draw your attention to the fact that we have two kinds of review: the prior and the post review. And this is determined by monetary thresholds. If you look at most of the non-compliant reported here, they are almost, all of them are almost, or they all fall within the activities. And post-review is when we go out to institutions, we look at what they have already done, and then probably identify weaknesses here and there, and so on.
Just to cut you short in your answer, in your, not the post-review, but in your review, prior review, do you have the authority in reviewing where you have seen that some of these things have not been adhered to? Could you, in your prior review, could you halt whatever request they are sending to you?
In our prior, yes, there are a lot of transactions that when we review them and find out that the procedures are not in line, obviously we stop it. Sometimes we cancel them in prior reviews.
Okay, that leads me to my second question. Your post-review should be based on your prior, isn't it? Your post-review should be based on what you had done prior to the purchases. Or those are two distinct functions?
They are distinct functions.
Then you don't relate your post to your prior review.
I'm not sure if you understand the process.
I do. The prior review is when requesting to purchase.
Yes.
The post review is after they have purchased.
The post review.
Yes. It's after they have purchased.
Yes, but in most cases, the transactions that were not subjected to our prior reviews.
No, wait. That even causes some problem. If it's not subject, it means when the thresholds have been met or are met.
If a transaction is within a threshold, for example, single source or the threshold for RFQ, institutions are allowed to proceed with those transactions without coming to the authority and then report to us on monthly basis. From the monthly reports, we will see the transactions when we go out for post-reviews. The prior reviews, according to the Act, are transactions that are within a certain threshold, more than the threshold for single source and RFQs, that should be subjected at any stage of the transactions to the authority for our prior review.
Yeah, but that comes back to my main question. And my main question is, what do you do during your post-review where you have found discrepancies or anomalies in the acts or in the actions of the procuring office to procure goods, that you have several abnormalities that they have used?
Yeah. Mr. Sanya, let me just help you. The post-review is when the procuring authority or institution has procured the goods which were within the threshold. And that's the time when they do their random reviews, they look at whether the procuring institution had followed due process in the transaction. So in the instance where they have not followed due process, they are told that you are not in compliance, you understand, in procuring those particular goods that were within the threshold. But for the prior review, those are transactions that the procuring authority ought to seek their approval before they start transacting. And I think your question is, what can they do? So in the circumstance where it is for approval, they can stop the transaction if during the course of the process they find out there are no due process, the processes are not followed duly. So they could, transaction to be cancelled, annulled, or, subject to to corrective measures. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Do you get it, Mr. Joyner?
I
okay.
think
I do,
let him further ask.
But I still think that the whole purpose of GPPA is to avoid monies or contracts being signed without due diligence in it. And what measures do you have in place if that has been? What recourse do you have?
Now, when institutions are found to be compliant, like I said earlier, during our reviews, we have two very important meetings. One is the entrance, and the other one is the exit. During the exit meeting, we identify the weaknesses, and we discuss them with them, apart from the prior to generating the report. In the report, again, we recommend for certain actions to be taken by the procuring organization itself. But then, in addition to that, we generate a report which is laid before the National Assembly. And all these non-compliances that we are talking about will also be reported to the PAC or FPAC of the National Assembly. For the 2020, we have provisions for such violations. A procuring organization or accounting officer who is found wanting will be dealt with in accordance with what the law provides for. Of course, in the 2018 Amended Act, it also provides that whoever is found wanting is liable for an imprisonment of not less than 5 years or a fine of $1 million or both. But then to establish fraudulent actions and so on requires some steps to be taken, because according to the Act, if we find something that we think is not according to the law, we can refer it to the Auditor General to do a tour of that particular procurement, these things, and then come out with recommendations. But apart from that, as I recommendations and so on are all laid before the National Assembly. So this is how we go about our reviews and our findings.
Can you proceed?
All right. Thank you, sir. So I will now Are you set?
Yeah, sorry, my battery is dead, so I want you to help me with.
While you are, is that your laptop battery?
Yeah.
Yes, so while it has been fixed, we will now probably discuss the Brikama Area Council for the year 2020. So let us just have a discussion probably before the technician will fix your battery charger. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes, so for Brikama Area Council 2020, I have the 2020 report, I have the 2021 report for the year ended 31st December. You understand? And for most of these compliance reviews, you will see when you go through them, I'm sure you must have been very familiar with, in fact, so some of them at a general level, that some of these problems are really problems that you find every year, even though they may say that these problems are being noted, or yes, we are aware of it, and then we'll work on it, we will try to fix it. But again, they keep on overlapping from one year to the other. An example, you have acting as the contrast committee, but maybe that there are no formal appointments, evidence of their appointment in writing. Do you normally come up?
Yes.
So for 2020 and these prevailing years, we also have that in Brikama. Another issue is, most of the times, the lack of specifications when they are procuring. Do you see that? Are these very frequent occurrences, or are they just once in a while findings that will occur when you conduct the survey?
They are frequent.
They are very frequent. And of course, what will you see is different. Spoken about this, but then how much of an importance is the fact that specifications must be present on all procurement transactions at the general overview?
Specifications are very important. Why? Because without specifications, a buyer may not be certain of the kind of things that he or she is buying. And at the end of the day, when a good is given to you, you may not be able to verify whether actually. And again, evaluation becomes very difficult, because requirements or specifications can also be taken to be an evaluation criteria. This is where you wanted. So at the end of the day, when something is supplied, you will be able to compare what you wanted versus what is given to you. So if there are specifications, you can easily get what you want to. But without specifications, how do you verify or ascertain that the good or item given to me is fit for purpose, or the right good is given to me? It's very difficult.
Yes. In fact, in primary elections as well, another issue which has really been a problem for most of the from 2019 to 2020, 2020, that when you find that these procurement activities being conducted on various instances, you see that most of these transactions were in fact being approved by the contracts committee. So what does that tell you? Who normally will then conduct or approve these transactions? How are they generally approved? If they are not being approved, a required procedure.
Actually, the law provides that every transaction should be approved by the accounting office.
Yes.
But if that is not the case, probably they have their own internal arrangements that a procurement can be done without the signature of the accounting officer.
Yes.
And I want to believe that this is the case with the Brikama Area Council, because if the accounting officer, who, if you look at the forms, approval of the account on behalf of the contracts committee in this case. So if the approves, the approval is done on behalf of the whole contracts committee members. So if this is not being done, probably their financial sort of transactions are regulated in a way that without the accounting, anybody can step in.
But how about if you have a situation where, in fact, the accounting officer is the one who conducted a particular procurement, and it did not follow the requirement. Maybe it was not tabled before the contrast committee. They didn't sit over it. That is why you have, in most instances, there are not, in fact, minutes of meetings of the contrast committee on most of the transactions.
Now, if proper procedures are to be followed, a transaction should not be paid, because the meetings that we have with, or the trainings that we have with members of the contrast committees and the like, one of the key things that we highlight there is, if, in fact, the law is such that there should be sacrifice.
Yes.
And one of the fundamentals is to avoid being accounting officer or the accountant or the head of, at the same time you
conflict of interest.
Exactly. So quotations, for example, the head of the institution, evaluated, and a recommendation is made and sent to the director of finance and the like. Now the question that should be raised is, where is the signature of other members of the contrast committee?
Yes.
And of course, with that, they should not proceed. He should not effect payment if other signatures or
so then when
are lacking.
When you have an individual or individuals conducting on periodical basis procurement, but and therefore institution, in this case for Brikama Area Council, and most times there are no evidence of these rules being followed. In fact, to the great extent that you can't even see a delivery note or a receipt to the delivery of such items or goods. I would want to ask, difficult to follow these regulations, this procedure? Is it extremely difficult to follow these regulations?
To me, not difficult. It's not difficult.
At all?
It's not difficult at all.
And so, to a great extent, if someone did not knows about, because one of the requirements are some people who are supposed to be in the specialized procurement unit, knowledge of procurement. Is that not correct?
Yes.
So if they do not follow these regulations to a great extent, there's a possibility that it has been willfully disregarded. And,
I think so.
And one of the reasons, would it not be for financial gains?
That's a possibility.
Yes. Now, I know you don't have, your laptop is not on, but nonetheless, we can still discuss some of the specific findings. Do you follow? Now, I will just make again, chapter 4. It appears as if most of your findings are on chapter 4. Yes. So I will just read out to you some of the findings, and we just discuss them briefly. There, on page 4, is the procurement of 1,680 bags of 25 kilograms of rice, at an amount of $907,680 from Blueprint Company Limited. It's a single source. Probably the for you and I to discuss that, in fact, it's way above the threshold.
Yeah.
Because, like most of the witnesses have said here, the threshold is $20,000. Is that not correct? Now, you also go to the second procurement, which is photographs, $8,500.
Okay.
Are you there?
So the first one is page 4.
The first one is on page 22.
Page 22.
Yes.
Procurement of rice.
A single source method was used to procure 1,680 bags of rice. Do you see that? Page 22.
Okay.
Yes. So the amount is $967,600 from
Yes.
Blueprint Company Limited.
Yes.
Yes. The amount here, is it below, within, or above the threshold for single source?
It's above the single source threshold.
In fact, it is significantly above.
Yes.
And therefore, I see you don't have a non-compliance column. Do you see that? Are you with me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, but then on the last, the compliance column, you stated there was of the contrast committee meeting as stipulated in GPPR and the GPA Amendment Act 2018.
Yes.
So this was in fact approved by the contrast committee.
Yes.
What for the approval of single amount is above the threshold? Needless to say, this is way, way above the threshold, extremely higher than the approved threshold. On what grounds can
anything more than the single source threshold and your single source must be approved by
please speak to the microphone.
a transaction is above the a particular threshold, being it single source or RFQ, should be subjected to the authority's approval, not only the contrast committee, but after all approvals by the contrast committees or any accounting officer, it should be sent to the GPPA for prior approval.
Approval.
Yes.
And that was not done in this situation.
I assume it is done. That is why you have a compliance issue, because there is no compliance issue in this case.
Sorry.
Please.
If it was done, have been reflected here that the authority granted approval. If it was done, authority, would it not have been reflected here during the course of your review?
Well, it indicated, but I think that is a suggestion that it should be indicated there. But in this case, we did not indicate that approval is given by the authority, because they don't have any non-compliance issues, meaning that approval is given by the authority.
Well, I don't think what enlighten us, because how do you convey your approvals? To begin with, before I go on to my next question, how do you convey your approvals?
Institutions will request for our approval. We will, and then if they are all the requirements in accordance with what the law provides for, we give approval in writing.
How do you convey it? In writing?
In writing.
So in this, so you don't give approval orally?
No, no, no.
At all?
Oral approval, no.
Yes.
No.
Okay, so in this instance, we will request for the authorities' written approval of this 967,680 from your institution.
Okay, that's a suggestion that in cases like this,
no,
because we have seen it as they have complied to it, and they don't have any compliance issue. So we have taken note, and in such cases...
No, we are requesting, the Commission is now requesting for the written approval for this transaction.
Okay, okay.
All right, kindly provide us with that approval. Thank you.
Written approval.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I want us to discuss with respect to, I understand that for amounts that exceed 20,000 for goods, single source should not be used, but of course there are exceptions to that. Now, what are the exceptions?
The exceptions are provided for in the Act, and among the exceptions include: 1, emergency cases; 2, when a particular good is provided by one individual only, and there is no alternative to that. You can use single source. That, for example, you buy items, and the next items that you want to buy should have the same features, or should be compatible to the goods that you have originally.
So in the application for an approval, any authority sent to GPPA, do they disclose these exceptions, which will warrant, which will provide an informed decision to your?
Yes, we require the procuring organization to justify, and the justification should be in accordance with one of the causes for the use of single source.
Yes. Now, for this particular transaction, we will come to that. We'll probably request for documentation to see the justification for approval of this. This single source is extremely above the amount. Is
yes.
Good. Now, page 22 on the same page, $8,500 says for single source. Yes, I think on that one you have highlighted that it is within the threshold,
that one is
and it is in compliance with the lay down rules. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good.
Council, Mrs. Sanyang, can you kindly provide to the Commission the procurement plan for this particular procurement, which complied with regulation 25(1) and section 29.
Section 29.
That is on page. They're requesting for the plan.
Okay, the plan that provides for the this particular procurement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the last bullet point, plan issue, right?
There was minutes. The last bullet point under compliance, SMP.
Yes, it's a
There was minute of the contrast committee meeting as stipulated.
No, at page 23, the last point.
Page 23, the last point.
Yes, purchase order was by the end user department as stipulated in regulations 28 of this CPPR and section 12(7)B.
Yes, that's a compliance issue.
Thank you. I
Should
just
have
wanted
come
you to
under
confirm
non-compliance.
that.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Council, can you please proceed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, that brings us to the end of the 31st December 2020 compliance review for the Gambia Area Council. Madam Chairperson, probably there are questions for the commissioners to ask. May I be guided?
Reconfirm from Mr. Sanyang that the procurement of vehicle spare parts, the category is goods, amount is 6,600, and the awarded contractor is Per Mangas Mechanic Shop, and the method of procurement is single source. And it says purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in the regulation, just like the one above. And we will also further request that you provide us with the plan, which indicates compliance in this particular procurement. And The next one is the procurement of stationaries. Category is goods. The same page 23. 42,607. The awarded contractor is KGN, and the procurement method is RFQ. And there is, I just found, was a non-compliant issue. The quotation approved by contracts committee.
Yes, that is a non-compliance issue.
And there was no minutes of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in the GPPR and the Amendment Act 2018. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the next one is the procurement of excavation and clearing of drains. The category is services. The amount is 450. Awarded contractor is Lankaramo Sawane, and the procurement method is RFQ. The non-compliant issues I want to confirm with you, which is not provided, which is not noted here, but is contained in the report, which is the quotations were not approved by the contracts. Is that a non-compliance issue?
Yes, it's a non-compliance issue.
There were no minutes of contracts committee meeting stipulated.
Yes, non-compliance.
And the next one is the goods amount. The procurement of rain suits, boots, and plastic gloves. Amount is 167,500. Is Friendship Enterprise. Procurement method is RFQ. And the non-compliance issues are the quotations were not approved by the contracts committee. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
There were no minutes of the contracts committee meeting.
Yes.
And yes. So all this, they have implication as to the nature of the contract that is awarded and the fact that they comply with the rules stipulated. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, any other? Yes, Mr. Honorable Silla has a question.
Mr. Sanya.
Yes.
Are compliance issues captured in your report? Compliance issues. For example, this procurement activity isn't compliant. Is it captured in your report?
The report that is submitted to the National Assembly.
Yes, that report I mean, right in front of you.
Where are the?
Something, the transaction, for example, it is compliant. Do you capture it? That's all I wanted to know. And so therefore, all compliant procurements are captured in that report.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Council.
Madam Chair, it appears as if it is time for break. May I be advised that whether it is time for break or not?
It is now after 1. We will be rising for prayers and lunch break, but we will be back at sharp 2:30. Yes.
As a commercial basis.
1 hour break. Thank you.